Ontario's Auditor General issued her latest report on the province's spending today, and it does provide ammunition for the new government of Doug Ford because, of course, its findings on a number of spending problems go back to the previous Liberal government of Kathleen Wynne. But it also drops at a time when there are calls for an investigation into the Premier's role in the appointment of the new Commissioner of the Ontario Provincial Police. Lots to talk about. Let's bring in Rob Benzie, the Queen's Park Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star. Rob Benzie, good to see you again.
Hi, Peter.
Let's start with the Auditor General's report. What's the big headline?
Well, I mean, normally this is a bad day for government, but this is a good day for government because it's a new government, and this is a massive report that is all about the previous Liberal government that the Ford government defeated in June. So it talks about all the transgressions of the previous administration, and the new government can just come forward, as they did, and say, look, we're going to clean a lot of this stuff up.
Okay, so one of the big one involves the free tuition for post-secondary education. What happened there?
Well, it's costing 50% more than they expected. It could be up to $2 billion a year. Now, the Liberals who are still here at Queen's Park say, well, that's because it's a good program and people are still picking up in it. But the new government says, look, we have to look at all programs. They are facing a $14.5 billion deficit, and they're looking for cuts. They didn't say they're going to cut the free tuition program today, but I would think it's something that they will be looking at in the future, because there may be some fat there.
So people understand, how does that work? It's not free tuition for everybody.
It's not free tuition. It's for low and middle income folks up to a household income of about $200,000 can qualify for this program. And hundreds of thousands of students are going to colleges and universities and getting this tuition paid back for them. It's a new way of doing tuition from the previous OSAP grants that they used to have. Now they remodeled the whole program. The previous Liberal government did, and it was a cornerstone election promise of previous Premier Kathleen Wynne. Voters didn't seem to buy it because her party was trounced at the polls, and Premier Doug Ford's Conservatives won a majority.
What other any other major transgressions that the auditors found?
Yeah, I mean, the auditor is concerned with an agency called the TSSA, which is the safety agency that oversees elevators and amusement park rides and the stuffing and stuffed animals. Just saying that a lot of things, there's not as much oversight as there needs to be. So she was concerned about that. She's concerned about Metrolinx, which is the transit agency that oversees the Greater Toronto Transit, the GO trains, and so on in and around the city. And she's expressed concerns about political meddling in how stations were chosen. Go figure, politicians getting involved in things like that. But so she expressed concern about that, and hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on various programs there. They also were concerned about Waterfront Toronto. That's the agency that includes federal, provincial, and municipal governments. And it's charged with overseeing this 2,000 plus acre waterfront here and they've only developed a few hundred acres. So she said that they're not doing very well. They haven't done very well, considering they've been around for 16 years.
How much mileage can the Conservatives get out of this? Since we talked about this, the Liberals are already out of office. So what are the Conservatives saying, and are they using it to bolster their narrative that they basically ran on during the election campaign, that it was all about waste and getting Kathleen Wynne's hands out of the taxpayers' pockets in Ontario? Is this make their case for them, or does it go that far?
Yeah, I think Christmas came early for Treasury Board President Peter Bethlenfalvy, who was able to say today, look, we're going to clean up what he called this quote unquote historic mismanagement. And it's a good day for a new governing party when the previous government is treated like this. And we saw the same thing, frankly, in the 2003 auditor's report, which is the last time we had a government change here in Ontario. The Liberals of the day were gloating about the previous Tory government's transgressions. Now the shoe is on another foot, and the new Tory government is rightfully so saying, look, these are problems that we inherited and we're going to go try to fix them.
Okay, the Premier himself is facing some questions over his role in the appointment of the new OPP Commissioner, Ron Taverner. The NDP wants an investigation. How come?
Well, this is a troubling story for lots of reasons, not least of which is Superintendent Taverner is a 72-year-old police officer from Toronto who's very close to the Premier's family, very close to Premier Ford. They've traveled together, and there's nothing wrong with Premier Ford being friends with a police officer. This police officer, however, is now in charge of the OPP, and they changed the rules for the job posting so that he could qualify because he wasn't a high enough rank. The rank needed to be an assistant chief at least, and he's 2 ranks below that. He's a unit commander here in Toronto, so he's in charge of about 700 officers. He's a very well-regarded police officer in terms of being a frontline officer, having served, as I said, 51 years in the Toronto Police Force. However, he has not ever been a senior manager in any stretch of the imagination, and we've seen the former OPP Commissioner, Chris Lewis, saying that this is a terrible pick and blamed the Premier for meddling. Now the NDP and the Liberals and the Green Party, as well as Democracy Watch, have asked for the Integrity Commissioner to probe this and find out if there was a conflict of interest. Premier Ford
what does
said
Doug
yesterday,
Ford say?
Well, Premier Ford is very defiant about this, and he said he did not recuse himself from the decision, but he maintains that it was made by an independent 3-person panel that includes the Secretary of Cabinet, the Deputy Minister for Community Safety and Public Safety, Community and Public Safety, who himself is a former police superintendent who used to be Superintendent Taverner's boss, as it turned out, and an executive search firm. So that was a 3-person panel, and Mr. Ford says he was not part of the decision-making process. It was presented to him as an fait accompli. That suggests that it's all a coincidence, of course, that his longtime family friend is now the commissioner of the provincial police force.
And qualified for the post under a new set of rules.
Yes, it's an interesting situation. Mr. Ford is saying, look, Superintendent Taverner is a great cop. He has been a great public servant for half a century, and he is just what the OPP needs to what the Premier said, boost the morale, because Superintendent Taverner is very much a frontline officers type of guy. But from the OPP people that I speak to, there's concern about an outsider coming in who may not know much about the issues that they face. The OPP is the second largest police force in the country after the RCMP, Peter, and they have something like 1.6 million square miles, or 1 million square miles, 1.6 million kilometers or whatever that they have to police, much of it in rural areas to do with First Nations and things like that Mr. Taverner, Superintendent Taverner, may not have experience because he's been very much an Etobicoke police officer here in Toronto, very much about urban issues.
All right, Rob Benzie, thanks for bringing us up to date on what's making news in Ontario today. Good to talk to you. Take care.
Thanks, Peter.